What up, my petty files? God, that might be the worst. Hope that doesn't get me demonetized. Sweet Baby Inc. over the past few days has been trending online, has been trending on Twitter. The topics, the conversations have bled over to every social media site, it seems. And all this hoopla, all this political debate, all stems around this Steam Curator list. If you don't know, a Steam Curator list is a list of games generated by a user who could either recommend or dissuade you from purchasing each game on the list. This list in particular contains all of the games developed by Sweet Baby. You see, Sweet Baby have been a part of some major AAA games over the past few years, like Spider-Man 2, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, to name a few. And over the past few months, there's been this growing narrative amongst gamers that Sweet Baby is single-handedly ruining gaming. Obviously, this is an overreach and overreaction, but when you take a look at what Sweet Baby actually does, if you take a look at their mission statement on their website, and then take a look at some of the games they worked on and the aspects of those games that people don't seem to enjoy, it becomes evident that whatever they do, it's definitely not helping, and you might want to avoid the games that they had a hand in producing. Which leads us to the Steam Curator list, which has surged in popularity over the past few days. Part of which was sparked by the backlash from a couple of Sweet Baby employees taking to Twitter to try and cancel the creator of this Curator list, who, by the way, is just some dude and not like a public figure. He's not a content creator or anything. This whole situation, the debate that's being had around it online from both sides of a political aisle, to me seems like it's beginning to unravel, and it's building to this powder keg that could lead to a Gamergate 2. Because when you start digging into not only Sweet Baby, but other companies that offer similar services, you begin to realize that a lot of the same players and the ideology behind Gamergate 1 are prevalent here. So with that being said, why don't we take a look at who Sweet Baby is, its effect on the industry as a whole, and the backlash from this Curator list. Sweet Baby Inc. is a Montreal-based company founded in 2018. As per their website, quote, "Our mission is to tell better, more empathetic stories while diversifying and enriching the video game industry. We aim to make games more engaging, more fun, more meaningful, and more inclusive for everyone." Translation: we aim to make things more gay so activists can tell us not only how cool we are, but how good of people we are as well. Would you like to see what services they provide as well? Quote, "We believe you need diverse voices to solve diverse problems. Sweet Baby Inc. provides narrative consultation at any stage of development, boasting a talented team with vetted industry experience to best bring your story to life." This means that Sweet Baby Inc. doesn't necessarily make their own games, but they accomplish their goals via doing diversity consultation work for actual game developers. Basically, their goal as a company, according to their website, is to inject diverse voices in the writing, narrative representation, and development of video games, which should raise a few red flags because their service section reads like a padded out resume. They offer writing and narrative, which are essentially the same thing. As any writing you do, even if it's NPC dialogue, does play into the world building, which is part of the narrative service they offer. It's the idea of saying, I know video editing and how to use Premiere. It's like, it's the same thing. We get it. You could have just said Premiere. Then they have their game development section, which whatever, no comment here for now. And then we have their representation section. Quote, "We believe that representation is key to connecting players and audiences. And we offer a few ways to help your team and project gain the respect needed to make it happen. We're part of an inclusive and knowledgeable community of diverse consultants, able to cover a wide range of cultural and sensitivity topics." Quote, "We're part of an inclusive and knowledgeable community of diverse consultants?" Translation: you could trust us because we exclusively hire women, upper middle class gay black guys, and Indians. But not like the icky, stinky, uncivilized ones that gang essay women and publicly stone them to death if they have a child out of wedlock. Like, they need to be at least second gen or newer, so anything actually cultural about them has been homogenized by the Western college system. Sweet Baby Inc. would be a hard pass for me. This is all activist diversity speak, a dog whistle for HR ladies to make them feel like by hiring them, they're making a difference. Now you might be asking yourself, who's behind this very diverse and inclusive company? The CEO and head writer and narrative lead is a woman named Kim Belair, who totally doesn't self-insert into games she works on at all.
So when I was small and starting to kind of express myself creatively in either writing or stories or art, I wrote about myself a lot. and I would put myself into a lot of art, into a lot of narratives, and I put my family and people who look like me in all of these cool scenarios.
That was initially a joke. She actually does seem self-obsessed enough to write stories about her instead of, writing characters that can stand on their own and be something more than oneself. Now, I'm not super pro culture war necessarily. Honestly, I kind of find it grating at this point. Like, it's just getting annoying. But, I'm not out here popping red pills on the daily. I don't think everything the left wing does is gay. But it's incredibly hard not to look past just how intertwined Kim Belair is with the progressive liberal ideology. For example, let's take a look at her speech that she gave at the GDC, the Games Developer Conference, speaking about straight white men.
I got told that the stories that I was writing and the things that I was creating for and about people who resembled me weren't not real stories and they were not right stories. And this was to the point that I received a list that I'm sure many of you have received that was, here's a list of authors and stories that are legitimate. Here's a list of people and stories that are important. And as you can imagine, they were, mostly men and almost exclusively white. If we ever did read, here's a book by like an African-American author, here's a book by a woman, here's a book by a Japanese author, it was for a lesson that was about this is what life is like as a woman. This is what pain and suffering is like as a black person. This is what pain and suffering is like as a Japanese person.
Now, besides that, I completely agree with her point that white men are the highest form of art. I found this excerpt interesting. She believes that insert marginalized group aren't being properly depicted in fiction, as in their core character values are based around their race or their gender. It just all seems a tad hypocritical to me that she calls racism when art defines a character by race and gender, but then her entire business model is centered around hiring people to work on and adding characters into video games solely based on their race and gender. This seems like a pot calling the kettle black type situation. Or actually, it's more like an instance of the kettle calling the pot not black enough and then tricking the pot manufacturer to start building their pots with carbon fiber instead, which makes the entire process way more costly. And carbon fiber also doesn't retain heat as well as cast iron, so literally it's just not as efficient. Sweet Baby's goals, or moreover Kim's goals, can be highlighted by this comment here.
And so recently I was consulting on a project that was a dating simulator. So the love interest is on a date with you and they ask you a very simple question, and it's, what was your ex like? Which is a bit much for a first date, but the player can either choose to say, okay, my ex was a good person, but it didn't work out. They can choose to say, I don't know if I really want to talk about that. Or they can choose to say, my ex was a monster. You must be so immature if that's what you're going to say on a date about your ex. I think that you lose favor in that moment with that character. And I can see where the design was. Like, I understand that what they wanted to do was just have a very simple question where if you respond, your ex or your date can say, I like that, or I don't like that. But I played through that and I realized something that they hadn't really seen. This question was deeply gendered, despite the fact that they didn't even intend that.
What does that even mean? Deeply gendered. It's comments like these that begin to paint this picture of Kim's view on men, or straight white men more specifically. She goes on to make the point that if you're playing as a woman and then you go on this date with a woman, it would imply that the ex was an abusive ex-boyfriend. I mean, sure, but it also could imply many other character traits based on, context and this individual that's already baked into the story. Personality traits exist on a spectrum, but when you think all people's traits are predicated on race and gender, then you don't have a very inclusive view on how people operate in the world. She then makes this point about what she terms picky babies.
Why are we still being told, oh no, that's not what players want? Why do I keep hearing that it's like an uphill battle for people to bring representation to what should be a very inclusive environment of creativity? That, the industry's stuck in its ways. The industry isn't as diverse as it should be or could be. We're all socialized in this society to kind of act against it and to fall into what is normal. Because I think so often when people like us get told, from higher ups or from society at large, this isn't what players want, it's not a conversation about content, it's a conversation about demographics. We still look at our core demographics and say, okay, they're white, cis, hetero males, and we cater almost exclusively to them. And the problem is that we don't just cater to them like, here, here's something that we think you'll enjoy, we cater them the way that we cater to like a picky baby. We feed them the same thing that we know that they love, and we keep on feeding it. We're like, here you go, you love it, eat this, eat this, eat this, so that then when they get anything else, they react as a picky baby would, which is be like, oh no, thank you, I do not want this. And we've actually done this so long that what we're doing is creating an entire nation of picky babies, and they make us scared to deviate from what we actually want to do, just in case these picky babies don't want to play our games.
Which, honestly, there's no other real way around it. This is literally just like a hateful comment. What she's saying is that the audience or gamers are stuck in their ways, that a core demographic of the franchise, their wants and needs are irrelevant. By giving the customer things that make them happy and therefore are willing to spend money on them, this has created a culture that is so accustomed to eating spoons full of good gameplay loops, masculine role models, and beautiful naked big titty women.
Beautiful naked big titty women just don't fall out of the sky, you know?
Beautiful big titty but naked women just don't fall out of the sky.
That whenever someone tries to feed them a spoonful of gay, they cry and throw temper tantrums. If we're sticking with the food analogy, that's like saying, I'm a vegan, and I think people who eat steaks are evil doo-doo heads. So I'm gonna start a secret cabal of food consultants to, over time, go to every restaurant and every grocery store and convince them to slowly start using more and more meat alternatives and then still sell them as steaks. And anyone who even complains that the $60 steak that they got from the steakhouse is something more like 60% soy-based meat replacement is being a picky baby. To reiterate, her views is that a core audience's taste should be disregarded because she knows better, and that her wants and needs as an oppression consultant are above the wants and needs of the customer. Her divine mission is to make gaming more diverse and inclusive, despite the fact that the audience don't actually want to pay for progressive politics. Kim makes the argument that the majority of customers are bigots who are stuck in the past, so it's her moral obligation to make something that nobody wants and will probably suck and bomb and lose the developer a bunch of money and might possibly have to go under, meaning that all the employees that work there are now out of a job because the race and gender of characters in video games is more important than making characters that are interesting, relatable, and fit the lore. She essentially sees herself as like the queen of black people, speaking on behalf of all black people. She is professionally black. When looking at their client list, it's pretty shocking to see the projects and the studios they've been involved with. Companies like Xbox, EA, Valve, Sony Santa Monica, 2K, Ubisoft, Square Enix, WB, Rocksteady, working on titles like Alan Wake 2, or is it Alan Wake 2? Alan Wake 2, God of War Ragnarok, Spider-Man 2, Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, etc. If I'm running a AAA game studio, the idea to me of taking money out of my budget to give to some consulting firm so they could, essentially just inject progressive politics that's masquerading as black characters into my video game, that seems insane to me. Like, if your goal was to add more diversity to your video game, like, just hire someone at your company internally that's like the czar of black people. Just invent a new position, the ambassador of black people. Especially if you're an indie dev. I mean, budgets are already so tight for indie games. So spending money from my budget on pretending not to be racist seems like a luxurious expenditure in my humble opinion. To be clear, Sweet Baby consults on just as many indie games as they do AAA titles. The narrative surrounding Sweet Baby Inc. is that they ruin every game that they touch. They are the sole reason that those games fail or perform less than they should, a la Justice League Kill the Suicide Squad. That seems like that was wrong. Whatever it's called, at the end of the day, yes, it's easy to take Sweet Baby and paint them as this very simple villain for us all to point the finger at. But no, it's not just a singular consulting firm that can be fully blamed for games sucking these days. Obviously, the foundation being built around these games had to have been FUBAR to begin with, but that doesn't mean that Sweet Babies and other companies that are doing the same service aren't playing significant roles in shaping the future of video games, or rather their death. If Sweet Baby is essentially hired to add black people to your video game, or at the very least, black people that seem like they were written by actual black people, Then let's take a look at some of the black people they've made in video games. Ooh, look at Miles Morales. Just look at him. Jesus. Does this feel like a black person to you? If you actually know any black people in real life, like I do, yes, I actually know a few. Do you think that this would be their power fantasy? Do you think black children would be looking up to this twink? For my own internal research, I've asked this question with pretty much every black person I meet. I have never met a single one that thinks this haircut looks cool. This feels like a black person straight out of a Need for Speed cutscene.
All right, focus up. Let's go!
It's ironic to me that Kim's mission is to add more black people to video games, but then they come out like this, with the personality of like a climate activist supergluing their hand to the protective glass of a painting in a fine arts museum, whose father turns out to be the CEO of like Shell BP or some kind of oil firm. I mean, look at this, for example. For a diversity consultant, why'd you let them put the wrong flag up? What about the women in this game? I mean, look at Mary Jane from the first game to the second. She looks like she started taking TRT. If you're making a character that young girls are supposed to look up to, do you really think they want to aspire to be a 2? People picked up online pretty quickly that this seemed like it was a self-insert by the writer Ashley Poprick, who didn't work for Sweet Baby, but I think the point still stands. The goal isn't to make art that marginalized communities can connect with. It's about making art that they personally can connect with, and then uses leverage so that their peers think they're like humanitarians or something dumb like that. God of War Ragnarok made a Norse god a black child for no reason, and by all accounts, cucked out Kratos. Though I haven't played the game, so I can't comment on that. More recently, Suicide Squad killed the Justice League, another game I haven't played because well, I mean, just look at the art style. Like, what is this? What am I looking at? Looks like a Nintendo Switch game. What are all these colors? Looks like Splatoon 3. It has no visual connection to like the DC art style. Shallow, repetitive gameplay aside, by all accounts, the writing and narrative sucked. Batman is unceremoniously killed off by Harley Quinn, and Wonder Woman looks like she sleeps with Free Palestine boy shorts. As I mentioned, Sweet Baby isn't the only company who seems to be infecting the game industry with progressive politics. Another one of these companies, according to Reddit, which helped fund Sweet Baby and get them off the ground, though for the record I can't actually substantiate this claim, its name is Baby Ghost, which is also located in Canada, so I wouldn't be shocked if they did actually help fund Sweet Baby. Baby Ghost is the non-profit arm of the company Weird Ghost, who, quote, provide grants to game studios run by founders who face marginalization and underrepresentation due to gender, race, queerness, disability, religion, housing status, economic status, immigration, or citizenship status. That is some of the most insane corporate speak I've ever read. Are you homeless and developing a video game? Do you have a crippling heroin addiction? Are you tranked out and slumped over like a zombie with open sores on your legs and arms, but are still trying to make the next puzzle platformer? Then come get this free money. There's no strings attached. There's nothing weird about this company at all. It's just free money. Are you an illegal immigrant that barely speaks English, but wants to make a dating sim centered around essaying women? Well, don't worry, we got you. Free money coming up. Both of the ghost companies only have 2 board members, Eileen Havalka and Jenny Faber. Just so you understand the type of person we're dealing with here, Eileen, she, is a queer and disabled white settler living on Treaty 1 territory in Winnipeg. They are a writer, game dev, and community organizer / advocate with a background in theater, games, poetry, and health communications. They have a PhD in communication studies. They have a PhD in talking to people from Concordia University and have published extensively within and outside of academia. If you're not up to date on the Canadian woke slang term, what did she say? Living on Treaty... a white settler living on Treaty 1 territory. That's her letting you know that she's white and she's living on native territory, as in all of Canada doesn't belong to anyone other than the natives, and she has to apologize for it at every possible turn because she's a bad person for merely existing. There are also 2 organizations that fund Baby Ghosts, Clever Endeavor and Infinite Ammo, the latter of which was founded by Eileen Havalka's brother, Alec Havalka, who tragically took his own life after Zoe Quinn, one of the central figures of Gamergate Season 1, made unfounded accusations that he essayed her back in 2019, which by all accounts never actually happened. He ended up losing his job, getting kicked out of Infinite Ammo, the company he founded, And his sister, Eileen, seemed to publicly on Twitter take the side of Zoe Quinn, being ousted by his family, ousted by his friends most likely, because they're probably all, you know, weird woke progressives, and being kicked out of his job. He ended up taking his life 4 days after these unfounded claims, these unsubstantiated claims that were made against him by Zoe Quinn. If you're unfamiliar with the lore of Gamergate, let me know if you want to know more about it. I did a video on it, like, I don't know, years ago at this point. I was much newer. I was a lot newer to making YouTube videos, so the video actually kind of sucks. I wouldn't recommend watching it, but I would be down to like remake an updated version of that if you guys are interested. And this brings us to the Sweet Baby Ink Detector Steam Curator list. That was a mouthful. A user-generated list that tracks all the games that Sweet Baby has worked on. Originally reported on by the Niche Gamer, this list warns players if they're about to buy a game Sweet Baby had a hand in making, and marks it as not recommended. This led Sweet Baby employee Chris Kindred to take to Twitter, adding Steam and the list creator Kirastoulis trying to snitch on him for breaking Steam's code of conduct, which he didn't, actively asking his followers to mass report the list to try and have it removed, and then further asking to mass report Kirastoulis himself to have his Steam account terminated and all his game library lost, a person who belongs to a marginalized group by Sweet Baby's own standards. And that's the diversity inclusion we all love. Attacking minorities when their tastes don't align with your own. That's something I can respect. Just bullying people when they don't think exactly the same as you. Honestly, I might be a left-wing liberal here. That actually seems pretty sick, dude. Oh, you don't agree with cucumber feed? Let me ask all of my followers to dogpile and harass you and dox you and get you to try and off yourself. Seems like a reasonable and measured response to me. Since then, the tweet has been deleted, with both Chris and Sweet Baby Ink's accounts locking themselves off to the public. A very brave move for those standing up for injustices. Then Maya Kramer also jumped in the mix. If you don't know who she is or forgot the TLDR, during Gamergate, not only did she have an unethical lesbian relationship with Zoe Quinn, but she also worked for Anita Sarkeesian, another key player in Gamergate, through a company called Silverstring Media, which is kind of a precursor to Sweet Baby Inc., but if I remember, they focus more on PR and promotion. And all of this played a huge role in the incestuous and interconnected mess that was the nepotism and favoritism in the games industry. And if anyone spoke out against them, they'd use a mob mentality to dox, harass, and try and get you to off yourself. And that's what Gamergate was actually about. It wasn't about hating women like places like IGN would try to have you believe. Also, it's worth noting that Kramer openly admitted to DDoSing the Fine Young Capitalist website, which led to the destruction of this charity. The Fine Young Capitalist being a group that would fund games being made by women that Zoe Quinn essentially just saw as like a competitor at the time. Oh, you do the same thing as me? Uh-oh, bye-bye, I'm Zoe Quinn. So Maya, who now works at Sweet Baby, also came to the defense of her company by saying, well, essentially, games don't suck. The writers are actively crafting narratives to impress their peer groups. It's capitalism's fault. Sweet Baby can't be at fault because Kim Belair is black. There's no financial incentives by global organizations to raise their DEI scores or anything. The people who don't like Sweet Baby games are racist. And she even added Steam to let them know that this list shouldn't exist because it was made by a person and not by a corporate funded media company who used their voice for diversity and inclusion like Kotaku or IGN. To which Community Notes chimed in letting her know that this list actually is accurate and she's literally just a socialist corporate shill. Now, if you notice in this screenshot, the list only had 9,000 plus followers at the time. And at the time of me recording this list has ballooned to over 200,000 followers. Womp womp, Streisand effect. We're even beginning to see the same playbook we saw with Gamergate 1. Mainstream gaming publications like Kotaku have begun putting out articles about the Sweet Baby incident, completely misrepresenting what it's even about. Quote, Sweet Baby Inc. doesn't do what some gamers think it does. No, one company isn't forcing diversity into all your favorite video games. And as we already covered, yes, Sweet Baby isn't solely responsible, but their sole existence is just to inject diversity. I can feel things continuing to spiral on this one. I think this Steam Curator list is probably it's just the tip of the iceberg. I think Sweet Baby is just the tip of the iceberg. I think this is going to spark real discussion amongst, actual gamers and not activists. into digging deeper into finding which companies are responsible for injecting all these progressive politics into their video games and generally just making them suck. Again, there's a lot of other decisions that are being made at the developers and the publishers themselves that also do suck, like, you know, microtransactions, etc., etc., etc. But I am very interested to see where this is going to go. But that's all for today. Subscribe to my channel if you like this video. It really helps out. Leave a like, leave a comment. Love comments. Memberships are open on my channel now. You can join at the intern tier if you want to be an intern for HermCorps Solutions Incorporated. And for $2.99, you can also be a junior associate. If you're looking to be a senior partner at the company, I will be opening up those tiers later on. Additional costs do apply. That's it for tonight. Bye-bye.